All right, sir. If we can start with your full name, please.
Uh, it's Laverne Harry Peck, P-E-C-K. Now I'm named after a French World War or a Revolutionary War general.
And where and when were you born?
I was born in DeKalb, Illinois.
And what is your birth date?
It's March 23rd, 1921.
So how old are you currently?
Oh, my parents?
How old are you currently?
How old am I now?
Yes, sir.
I am 97 years old.
Wonderful. And which branch of the military did you serve with?
I was in the Naval Air Corps.
And what years did you serve?
Now what?
What years did you serve?
I served from the start of World War II to the finish of World War II, the start of Korea to the finish of Korea. And while I was not in Vietnam, at the time I was a test pilot for new crew equipment, high altitude spacesuits.
So did you fly for the Navy during World War II?
I flew 47 combat missions in World War II, helped destroy 8 Japanese aircraft, 4 of which they credited me and 4 for my wingman.
Okay. And what was your rank with the Navy, sir?
Captain.
And did you receive any medals?
Air medals. And I was nominated for Distinguished Flying Cross, but something happened that it had to go through some review, and one of the guys on the review didn't like me because it goes back to when I was an aviation cadet. He was one of my instructors, and he tried to wash me out because he had some cousins in my hometown who got in trouble, and my dad arrested them and then kept them from going to jail. But he always held it against me because and later on, because he was he got downgraded, and I became the commanding officer of a reserve squadron, and he ended up as one of my pilots.
The tables had turned.
Yeah, so it was a turn of and he anyway, he put a bad name in, or put a bad recommendation in that clobbered things.
So tell me about your parents. Tell me about your childhood growing up. And
Oh, okay. My dad was a police officer, and he became an FBI agent and the chief of police. And we lived in a small town of DeKalb, Illinois, and he was a motorcycle policeman for highway patrol. And one time when he and his buddy were riding motorcycles, they spotted a gangster car from Chicago full of rum. There was three guys had a great big old touring car full of rum. Well, my dad and his buddy took out after him, and my dad was one of the best shots you've ever seen. He taught me how to shoot. But to get back to my growing up, but they tell my dad and Sid took out after these Chicago gangsters, and they just stayed out of their gun range until Sid, my dad's motorcycle buddy, said, my dad says, okay, drop back. And my dad used to, when he was young, ride in early motorcycle races back in the early 1900s and go 100 miles an hour on a motorcycle. And anyway, he gunned up and shot the rearview mirror right out from between these guys' heads. Well, the glass splintered in their faces and they all had to stop to get the glass out of their eyes. So Dad stopped and they started to climb out with their guns. And Sid said, my dad says, hold it, right there. He says, I shot the rearview mirror right between your heads, but my next one is between your eyes. And they all dropped their guns. And that's back in the 20s. But, and growing up, I was born 3/23/21, March 23rd, 1921. And as I say, my dad was a police officer.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I have. I have my son, my daughter.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have one brother.
Is he older or younger?
He's much older. He's 11 years older than I am. Okay. And he's passed away now. And he always watched out for me. And I can remember one time when I was in first grade, and my brother, I think, was, I was 6, he was 17. And they saw this cyclone coming in from, and I was in the first grade. And we used to have cyclones, northern Illinois every now and then. And so the school saw the weather changing. And they suddenly realized that the cyclone was going right through our grade school, Glidden School. So all the kids had to get underneath their desk in the whole school. And it went right through and blew some windows out in schools. Nobody got hurt. But that was when I was in 6th grade. First grade, I beg your pardon. Mm-hmm. But growing up in my youth,
what did you guys do for fun?
Let's see. In those days, on Halloween, we used to get corn and throw corn on the windows of people running through the neighborhood. And we had these thimbles with the string on it on a rod. We'd go up to a window and we'd pull the thimble against the window. Hey, you're not supposed to hear this. And we'd make all kinds of noise at Halloween. And we wouldn't do any damage. We just...
Just for fun.
Yeah, it was strictly fun. Yeah, and oh, some of the when I can the earliest thing I ever remember, I was 3 years or 4 years old. I had pneumonia. They almost lost me, and I can remember my dad, mom standing by. I'd been on a small bed, and they put me in the crib, so because I was thrashing around, and I can remember waking up, and I had 4 or 5 temperature, and they thought they were going to lose me, and all of a sudden the fever broke just like that. And I can remember I woke up and I could see they were looking over at me. And they couldn't believe it.
Well, good thing it did.
Yeah.
Now, was it beneficial having a father, an FBI agent as a father?
Oh, hey. My nickname in school was Chief. And because Dad he would never he would catch kids doing things wrong. And the first thing he'd do, he'd take them down to the police station and wouldn't say it. And now some of the kids thought they were pretty tough. He'd put them in the jail, one of the lockups, one of the jail cells, and walk off and leave them. Well, it usually lasted from maybe an hour before the kid was crying his eyes out in the cell, or maybe a little bit longer. But for the ones that thought they were the toughest, they were the ones that broke the earliest. And Dad would then take him out of the cell and sit him down and say, how would you like to spend the rest of your life there? And he explained to them if they did straighten out, that's where they would be. But they would have no record. And they all became my dad's best friends. Because, hey, he'd sit down, he'd talk to them and explain. As a matter of fact, some of them even went to work for him. And, because he used to catch kids doing things. When I was in high school, where was it? Leroy Davidson. No, it was when I was in high school. Leroy Davidson used to be one of we used to have boxing coaches. He was a national AAU 147-pound champ. And he taught us to box, especially me, because of my dad catching kids doing something, and they were going to take it out on me. Now, I'll never forget, I was in college, my freshman year at college, and I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but I'll think of it in a minute. He was a football player, and Dad caught him doing something, and explained to him that, hey, he could it was that good, he could become a professional football player. But if he kept going the way he was, he'd be playing football in some cell or some jail, and straightened him out.
Now, did you ever get put in that jail cell?
What?
Did your father ever put you in that jail cell?
Yes, he did.
How many times?
Once. I did something wrong. He just stuck me in jail and left me there.
You remember how old you were?
I think I was in. I think I was in grade school, maybe 4th or 5th or 6th grade. I don't know. It was young enough it left an impression.
You learned your lesson.
Yeah, and it didn't take long. And Dad, he was the kindest man you've ever seen, but also the toughest. He taught me to shoot. And I know when he was with the FBI, I was, I'm trying to remember, I was in the service. And I was a fighter pilot, and I just come home from a year in the South Pacific in combat and getting ready to go back down again. And I was in the squadron, and a guy visited the squadron. He was an FBI agent. And this is when they found out my dad was too. He said, yeah, you know, your dad and I are working on a sabotage case together. And I was I think I was a lieutenant in the Navy as a fighter pilot. And he just wanted to, and he happened to be in the area investigating something that I was involved in, so I could help him. And that's when he told me my dad was an FBI agent. Nobody knew it. And I can remember Dad dressing up like a hobo. Just like a bum.
He's undercover, or
yeah, he was strictly undercover. Nobody knew who he was.
Now I understand you learned to fly at a pretty young age. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was, the first time I went flying was in the 1933 World's Fair. I was, let's see, that's 33, I was 12. I was 12 years old, and I had saved my money to go flying. And I can remember I got in line at the World's Fair in Chicago, and this big old tri-motor. And I had paid my money, and some guy came along, and he gave me a shove out of the line and got in line. And that was the last seat in this old DC-3, or a tri-motor Ford. And I was just heartbroken. And the pilot was standing there. All of a sudden, his co-pilot had eaten something, and he became ill. and the pilot looked around and he said, get me some cushions. They got enough cushions so I could see, sitting in the co-pilot's seat where I could see out and hold his yoke. He says, you're my co-pilot. So there I was flying that DC, that tri-motor Ford. Oh, I just went out of my mind.
No prior flying experience.
What?
You had no prior flying experience.
Oh, hey. My dad hated to fly. My mom loved to fly. And when I got my pilot's license, she demanded she be my first passenger.
And how old were you when you received your pilot's license?
Oh my gosh. I was a freshman in college. This is just before World War II. And let's see, I think I was 20. 20 when I got my pilot's license. And I'll tell you, there's nothing like flying. And I'll never forget when World War II started. The neighbors were having a neighborhood party. And I had just completed all my cadet training and had qualified as a fighter pilot. Now, I don't know if you ever heard of Butch O'Hare.
No.
He was one of our first aces. And I was in his squadron, VF3, Fighter Squadron 3. And I was his wingman. And I guess I was when I was a cadet, they demonstrated inverted spins to us. I don't know if you know what an inverted spin is. You pull your airplane up, roll it on your back, and completely stall it so it starts to spin. It spins down on your back. Now this is the toughest maneuver to get out of. First thing you do, you don't shove your stick back to get your nose down like in the normal spin. You're on your back. So you want to get your nose down. So you push your stick down. And then you kick opposite rudder and flip over to a regular spin. And then shove your stick forward to get your nose down and kick opposite rudder to stop your spin. And I used to love to do them, and they showed me how to do them. And I'm trying to think of my instructor's name, Commander, oh boy, I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
Anyway.
So did you join the Navy before the U.S. entered the war?
Yes, I was home on leave, and the neighbors were having a neighborhood party. And we were listening to the Chicago Bears, Washington Redskins championship football game, and all of a sudden, our old, we had one of these big old, vacuum tube radios with a big horn on it, and it went dead. And my brother, who's 11 years older than I am, and they both jumped up to see which vacuum tube had burned out. Because we were listening to this game. And they were all lit. We couldn't figure out what was wrong. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, all of a sudden, the radio came back on. And it said, "The Japanese are attacking Pearl Harbor. The Japanese are attacking Pearl Harbor. All military personnel report to base immediately." And back to the base they went, and there were 4 of us from my hometown. We'd all joined the Naval Air Corps at the same time. And we all had gone through civilian pilot training. So we all, and
did you guys get split up, or did you guys
yeah, we
stay
got
together?
split up.
Yeah.
2 of them became transport pilots, multi-engine. 1 became a instructor, and I became a fighter pilot. And the reason I became a fighter pilot was you were never supposed to do an inverted spin alone without an instructor. Now, we used to fly a biplane fighter, and when you were doing these maneuvers, you always had an instructor with you. But when you were just up flying alone and doing normal maneuvers and normal spins, you're alone. And so I'm up there doing inverted spins. And I
Were you
noticed.
showing off a little bit?
What?
Were you showing off a little bit?
Absolutely. Oh, hey, I loved them. And all of a sudden I noticed all these instructors with a student in there were circling me. And I thought, hey man, I'll show them. And I did it for a while, and then I landed. I came in and landed. When I landed, two of them landed right beside me. And Commander, I got to think of his name. He came up to me and he was going to tear me out, and I says, Commander, I was up practicing my inverted spins. So when my check pilot wanted me to check it out, show him how well you have taught me how to do maneuvers, that stopped him from saying anything. He looked at me, and one of the other guys were with him, he says, I'll be damned. He's a fighter pilot. I'll never forget that. From there on out, I was a fighter pilot.
Now, was that what you wanted to?
Hey, that was the dream of all pilots. And I got in a few dog fights. And I'll tell you the one that I remember, we're on the, was it the Essex, the aircraft carrier? We were out looking for a Japanese fleet. We knew where they were, approximately. So my wingman and I were flying a combat air patrol up ahead of the fleet, looking for the Jap carriers. And all of a sudden, we looked up. 8 Jap airplanes above us. Now, the Japs didn't realize that we're Americans. We don't turn from anything. we fight. So here they came over. They were going to take my wingman and I out. They started to dive at us. And the next thing they saw, we're coming at them head on. And we had the first rockets that had been developed. And the rockets had a better range than their 20 or 30 millimeters. So just as we got in rocket range, my wingman and I each fired 4 of our 8 rockets. And and you can imagine, I came so close to a couple of them, I saw the expression on one of their faces just before the rockets hit them. They didn't know what to make of them.
They've probably never seen it before.
Man, when they hit, here we are coming head on, and they blew up. Parts flying all around us. And I can remember dodging underneath the parts and turning around real fast so they couldn't get in my tail. And you never let anybody get in your tail. You always got below them and stayed below them so you could pull up on their belly. And as I say, we fired our rockets and there were just parts of airplanes flying in a little while because we're just beyond their gun range.
So rewinding a little bit, before you got sent overseas, where did you do your basic training?
To make what?
Where was your basic training done?
Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, and then Oh, Dallas, Texas.
And what year were you finally sent overseas?
Uh, hmm. Oh boy. Let's see. I was home on leave. The neighbors were having a neighborhood get together, and there were 4 of us from my hometown that had gone to service together.
When did you ship out, Dad?
Oh, okay. I'm trying to, let's see. The war started in 1941, right? 1942.
You remember which month?
About a year, about 3 or 4 months later.
Okay.
I think, let's see. The war started December. I think this was January or February.
Okay. So it was shortly after.
What?
Oh, that's right. You got your. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh, actually, that was later. Yeah, no, he was a naval aviator in March of 19. Oh no, that's your birthday in 42. July of 42.
Yeah.
You got your pilot. You got your wings.
Yeah. And,
So it was a while later.
Yeah. Just very shortly after that, I was in Butcher Harry Squadron, and
That was way later.
and went down the South Pacific, and now here's him.
Now I understand you had a little incident flying underneath the Golden Gate Bridge.
Now, how did you find out?
Word got out.
We were based at Alameda, California. Now, Alameda is right across the bay from San Francisco. We used to take off from Alameda, and in bad weather, when nobody could see us, we'd stay right on the water. We'd make a right turn at the end of the runway and go right underneath the Bay Bridge, and then under the Golden State Bridge, and then on out. And I can remember I came back one day, and here, all the commanding officers were out looking at airplanes, and they pulled me up. I got out, and we're wondering, what in the heck is going on? Well, it seems that I'm trying to think, let's see, I'm thinking of his name in a minute. Oh, darn. We were flying together, and he was ahead of me. And there were some telephone wires. And there was a Navy admiral talking to a Coast Guard admiral, and their lines went dead. And we came back. And the leader of my flight had 25 foot of telephone wire hanging off his tail wheel. And oh man, were they mad. And they were going to court martial us. One guy says, too late. They're heading for the South Pacific. So off we went. And nobody gave a darn.
Never got in trouble for it.
Yeah, we could have been in deep trouble. And we did crazy things. Yeah, I flew under the bridge 2 or 3 times. We'd go under the Bay Bridge and then keep right on going and go under the Golden State and then off. Now, only if the weather was bad and they couldn't see who it was. That meant the ceiling had to be 300 feet or less.
So visibility was minimal at that point.
Yeah, right. And so you couldn't see anything. You couldn't see who it was.
And what are you flying at that point?
I was flying let's see. I flew a Grumman Gulf Hawk Bear. It was a biplane fighter, the early biplane fighter. And then I flew Brewster Buffaloes and then Wildcats. So that's 3 times.
So when you were shipped out to the South Pacific, did you fly over there? Did you take a ship? How did you?
I was aboard a carrier.
Okay.
Yeah, now.
Which carrier?
Let's see. Manila Bay. The Manila Bay. The Altamaha and the Burton. Let's see. Coral Sea. And I think that was Manila Bay. I was off the Manila Bay then.
That was the first place that you arrived in?
Yeah. And that was a small carrier.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that where you would fly your missions from?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, always. Well, what we're doing, we were invading the Marshall Islands and the, I'm trying to think of the other islands. Marshall and the, before the Marshalls. Oh, I'll think of it in a minute.
Tarawa?
The Solomon Islands?
Yeah, Tarawa. And we used to strafe the beaches ahead of the troops. And I can remember on, was it Tarawa or Kwajalein? Kwajalein. We hadn't taken Kwajalein yet, but we were strafing to knock down the AA and the shore batteries and things, so when the troops came ashore, they would have minimum opposition. And I can remember on one of the missions, I'd taken off in the carrier, and the weather was stinking, so the Japs didn't think we'd have anything out. And I'm flying along right at the water top, and I looked. Here's about 4 Jap, a couple trucks and cars going down right on the beach route, and we wiped them out. And all it was, I can remember, it was obvious that one of the trucks right in the middle was full of ammunition and gasoline or something, because I can remember when we hit them, they just blew up. There, nothing but fire. I wiped all of them out. Then another trip over there, we were flying off the carrier out on a scouting mission. We used to fly out looking for the Jap carriers. And my wingman and I, we looked up, and we had the very first rockets now. And the Japs hadn't seen a rocket. And
Get back to the barge story, Dad.
what?
You skipped stories. Go to the barge.
Oh, the bar.
You were talking about the barge at Kwajalein.
Oh yeah, that blew up.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about a minute ago.
Yeah. And anyway, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, the one that we hit on.
No, not. You were talking about a strafing mission before the landings, and you came across those barges on a bad weather day. That's the story you were just telling.
Okay. Oh yeah, okay, one of them was full of ammo, and he went all the pieces, and there was another. I'm trying to think of the other barge, the other time, Tom. Oh, when we met him head on.
That wasn't a barge. You already told that story about the shooting the planes down with the rockets.
Yeah.
You already told that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we used to also, oh boy, I'm trying to think. I tried this a long time ago. And
I understand.
it's, I'm trying to picture where it was, Tom.
The Tarawa, Kwajalein.
Yeah, let's see. Quad. Oh, okay, Kwajalein. Oh. I'm trying to think of the islands off of Japan.
Marshalls?
Marshalls, yeah. The Marshalls. And that's before the troops went ashore. And we were strafing the beach. And I can remember there were about 4 or 5 Japanese trucks, cars and trucks going down the beach. And they didn't expect us to be out in this kind of weather. And we took them out. We hit them and there was some big explosions and wiped them all out. And then another time when, I'm trying to remember when there were 8 of them. And they were flying off a carrier. We're off.
Dad, trucks on the beach.
What?
You're talking about the trucks on the beach.
Yeah, they all blew up.
Okay. Yeah, you told the story about the meeting the Japs head on already.
What? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, maybe another question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first mission?
Okay, let me think. Wow. Let's see, it's on the carrier. And not the Boxer, it was on Manila Bay, the Jeep carrier. And I tell you, there's so many of them. There are 47 and 67. And I know we were out on a we used to fly out on search missions. And I don't think the first one wasn't when we met the other ones head on. I don't think that.
No, that wouldn't have been your first mission.
What?
That was later in the war.
Yeah. I think we didn't. I don't think we saw anything, Tom. We just we used to fly out 120 miles, across 120 miles and back. And
So it was relatively uneventful, probably.
yeah, and we were searching.
Do you remember how you felt before taking off of the carrier? Were you a bit nervous at all, or excited?
I'd be lying if I was scared stiff. You didn't know what you were going to see. And I mean, the early part of the war, the Wildcat was far inferior to the Jap Zero. Now they redesigned later on the Wildcat, so it looked just like the old Wildcat, except it was completely streamlined, all flush riveted. And instead of the old 950 horsepower engine, you had a 2,000 horsepower engine. And it could outclimb anything. And later on, that's when the Japs looked down. They didn't realize we had these new airplanes. They looked just like the old one. And with our rockets, they'd never seen a rocket before. Because our squadron had been trained and tested the first rockets for the Navy. And man, what a difference that made.
Now, would you, every time you'd go on a mission, you'd always have a wingman beside you?
Yeah, we always had a wingman.
Was it pairs of two?
Two, right.
And did you have the same wingman throughout the entire war, or would that change?
Yeah, we, in World War II, well, in Korea, it would stay the same, except in World War II, you had the same. And in Korea, he had the same wingman. And you trained them. I mean, we'd go out and have dogfights, and we'd train our guys. So we knew we knew what the tactics the Japs used. And I know, well, we never had a dogfight with the communists. We chased them home a couple times. And
that would have been Korea.
that was in Korea. And I could remember they couldn't believe it a couple times. And then another time, one of their guys, something happened. What was he? The guy, I'm trying to think of who it was. Oh, it was a Jap. Okay. A Jap was coming down his parachute. And we had some young pilots that, oh man, they were just a little bit bloodthirsty. I mean, hey, you didn't shoot people down under a parachute. And I can remember I saw these two guys coming getting ready to shoot at this guy under a parachute. And I fired a burst across the front of him. And I really tore him off. I said, what kind of asses are you? I think I used stronger language. I said, you get near that guy, and I'll shoot you down myself. And, they got down, and they went to the Admiral, and he started telling the Admiral about him. Now, I'd flown for the Admiral when he was a captain, things. And they thought they were really going to get, because I was sort of a tough guy, they're really going to get back at me. The Admiral looks at him and says, you guys are permanently grounded. What kind of, he used bad language. He says, we don't shoot helpless people.
Interesting.
And later on, Tom, didn't this Jap look me up with his family? I'm trying to remember.
No.
No, I guess he didn't.
No, you're thinking about something.
What?
Book. It was a book we were talking about. You're thinking about a story we read.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, you never had any interactions with Japanese.
Yeah. Oh, later on, of course, in Korea, the Japanese flew with us.
So you were fighting against them in World War II, and then
Yeah.
flying with them in Korea.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So how do you make that distinction? You mentioned that he was floating down in a parachute, but he's still the enemy. So how do you where do you draw the line?
Well, I was about this distance from him, or my wing just cleared his parachute.
Sure.
So I'm look. I could see who he was Japanese.
But he's still the enemy.
Yeah.
So how do you
Well, hey, we wanted to take prisoners. We wanted to question them. You don't question dead people.
So he was an asset, essentially.
What?
He was no longer a threat at that point.
Right. Yeah, and plus, hey, that's helpless people. You don't murder helpless people.
If only they had played by the same rules.
Yeah. No. Hey, I doubt. Oh no. But we did.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember this guy under the parachute because I was close enough. I had a white helmet and Peck written across.
He couldn't read, Dad.
What?
He couldn't read English.
I'm trying to think. Or was that Korea?
You had a white helmet in Korea.
Yeah, in Korea, yeah.
And they wouldn't have been able to read it.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you.
Oh.
You'd take off from the carriers.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And you'd have to land back on the carrier.
Oh yeah.
And what is that like?
Oh, I loved it. You come in, you have a landing signal officer. Oh, here. And you come across around the carrier, and the landing signal officer has wands. And when you're coming aboard the carrier, and exactly the carrier's going here, and you're turning into the carrier, and when you get right to the correct spot to cut your gun and land on the carrier, the landing signal officer will give you a cut like that. If you're coming in exactly correct, this is Roger, this is R in semaphore. Roger. You get a Roger. Now if you're high, he'll go high. And if you only need a little dip to get back down to altitude, he'll go like that. And if they want you to turn more, they'll go like this.
So you just kind of mimic what he's
that's
showing
the
you.
flags. That's why they want your wings. And if you're getting too slow with your nose too high, so you go getting close towards stall speed, they'll give you the come on. If you're fast, they'll give you the fast signal, which is F, and in semaphore.
How much space would you have to land the plane?
Let's see. The Jeep carriers were about 600 feet long, and you landed on about the last 300 feet, the first half of the carrier. And then they had a barrier. Now on the early carriers in the early war, we only had a cable stretched across. And if you didn't catch, and the tail hooks, were on a hydraulic dampener. So when they hit the deck, it was supposed to keep them from jumping wires. But before they really developed them properly, the darn hook would come down and jump over the cables, and you'd run into this barrier wire. Well, that happened to me. It just scared the daylights out of me. And, there's a picture. I thought I had a picture someplace. I'm looking down at the wire where the prop had hit it and cut it. And but it had stopped me.
Now, did you have any other close calls?
Oh man. I told you about when the first rockets came out.
Now, how about engine failure?
Oh yeah. I'm taking off from the carrier, and I'd been in a strafing mission in the Marshall Islands. And I'd taken off from the deck from the carrier. I catapulted that day. And my wingman, JT, had been catapulted at the same time because it had two catapults, one on each side.
How does that work?
Oh, hey. 1 second, you're sitting here. And the next second, you're doing 120 knots. They shoot you down the deck. And in about 150 feet or 120 feet, you go from 0 to 120 miles an hour. Now that is a thrill. But what you used to do, you'd hold your rudder and you'd go full throttle. And you'd have your hand on this, put your hand over here, and when you're ready to be catapulted, you pull your hand off your shoulder, you grab your stick, and lean back. Because if you're not leaning back against the headrest here, you got a heck of a whack. You only do that once. And you're lucky if you don't go into drink. And I went in the drink one time. My wingman, we both were being catapulted off the carrier. And I got up about 500 feet. My wingman said, my engine just quit dead. He couldn't believe it. He looked at my prop, it stopped right there. And he said the next thing happened. My nose went down and then went straight down. And he circled me. Now had been in the research squadron, and we'd been developing this new scuba oxygen mask because so many pilots would crash and they drowned. So we developed an oxygen mask, which was also a scuba mask. Well, I had one of the first ones. And when I hit the deck, my airplane just kept right on going. I got knocked out. And I remember I looked at my watch just before I took off. And I came to, and then everything's getting black around me. I don't know, have you ever scuba dived? Well, when the deeper you go in the water, the darker it gets. Well, I was so deep that it was all black around me, but I could see bubbles going up. And I knew that was the way I had to get out of my airplane and swim. So I started to climb out, and I said, I got to take my life raft. So I held on to the started airplane, sinking deeper and deeper. Reached in, got my life raft, and the parachute wouldn't come loose. So I grabbed everything, and I started swimming to the surface. Now I didn't know how deep I was, and how long I'd been underwater until I got to the surface. And my wingman had called and reported the crash, said no survivor. And all of a sudden he says, I'll just take another look. So he went back and he looked down. He said it looked like an old barge towing a parachute. I was towing my parachute and my life raft. I'd been underwater 8 minutes. But that new oxygen mask saved my life. And I can remember he called in, they couldn't believe it. When he says, my God, he survived. I don't know how he did it.
Now, do you remember your engine failing? Do you remember going down? Or?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't. I got knocked out. But I remember coming up. Because when I came to, I know, I looked down. And there's blood all in front of me. So anyway, I swam to the surface. I got out and got my life raft and got my signal mirror out and looked, and I had some royal cuts I couldn't see out of my right eye. It was all red. The blood was running down. So I got my first aid kit out and bandaged up my head. Well, I got my life raft first, and got my serum mirror out, and then I bandaged up my head, and then I realized I better tie myself to the life raft because it was a little rough, and if it tipped over, I could never swim fast enough to catch it. So I tied a line to my life raft into my life jacket, so it couldn't get away. And then I looked at my watch, and I knew it'd been almost 8 minutes.
And how long were you in the ocean? Before they picked you up?
Or in the life raft, you mean?
Yeah.
About 6 to 8 hours and I'll never forget them. I was floating around in the life raft, and hoping there's no sharks around, because I was still in the area where there was blood, and sharks go after blood, and there was none there, fortunately. And anyway, I got bandaged myself up, and all of a sudden, I saw way on the horizon, here's a destroyer going across. And they had the guy up in the crow's nest. Now he was looking for Jet submarines, because the Jet submarines used to go up with their periscope. And something happened, I don't know. And he all of a sudden looked to the left. Something attracted him to look to the left. And here comes a wave, and I'm sitting up on top of the wave. and that destroyer did a a 90-degree turn and come sailing right over next to me. And they threw me in line. Well, in the meantime, I had tied everything to me. I dove onto my life raft, swam over to the edge of the destroyer, and they had the cargo net over the side. And there's some guys leaning over the side throwing a line to me, wanted me to grab the line and tie it around me. Well, I just kept climbing up the cargo net. I got to the edge, and two guys were standing there, and they want to grab me. And I put my hands out, and they said, "I'm okay, guys." They passed out colder than mackerel. They caught me before I hit the deck. And the next time I came to, I'm in the captain's cabin. I looked up. I'm feeling okay. I got a bandage in my head, and here's all my my flight gear hanging up. They'd washed. I'd been unconscious long enough that they'd washed all my clothes, everything, and they dried them. You know, they have a fast dryer, and they dried them up, and they had them all hanging up there. So I got dressed and walked out of the captain's cabin on the bridge, and the captain and the doctor, the flight surgeon came unglued. "What are you doing up?" "I'm completely dressed, feeling good." So they transferred me to a hospital ship, but happened to be close by. And because of the head injury, they were afraid that something was wrong. So they put me in the hospital ship and under observation. And after, I think it was 48 hours, or I forgot how long it was, hey, I was completely normal. And the doc said, hey, he's clear to fly again. So I begged the destroyer, or the hospital ship, to have a destroyer take me back to my carrier. So sure enough, they sent me to the command ship. The admiral was aboard, and I went up to the admiral and told him I wanted to go back to my flight squadron. So I don't want to leave my buddies alone. So he looked at me and he said, "We need fighter pilots. We'll have you aboard real quick." So back I went to my carrier.
Do you remember which destroyer picked you up?
What?
Do you remember which destroyer picked you up?
Yeah, 606 USS Coghlan. And the 605, the Caldwell, took me back from the hospital ship to my carrier.
And while you were in your life raft, were you concerned that you may never be found? Did that thought run through your head at all?
Absolutely. But I said, okay, I will survive. You remember there were 4 or 5 Navy pilots and they crashed in a multi-engine airplane, and they floated around for, I don't know, about a week, and they fished. Now I had a fishing hook and everything, and they lived off fish. They ended up with their food, and then they started living off raw fish, and one of them died, and they had to bury him. And the other 3, they were rescued, and I think one of them, he was so far gone that he passed away, but the other 2 lived and continued to live.
Yeah, I know there's a few stories.
What?
There's a few stories kind of similar to that.
Yeah.
So 16 hours, that's a pretty long time, especially when there's no guarantee that anybody's going to find you.
Right, oh yeah.
So what preparations did you make?
Well, the first thing I did, after I got my head bandaged up, and realized that, hey, I've got to tie everything into my life raft. I don't want to lose anything, including me. Because if I ever became separated from the life raft, you can't swim that fast. And so I had everything tied in the life raft, plus the life raft tied to me. And I then began to take stock of where I was, how long I would survive, or could survive, eating raw fish and things. And I can remember, I forgot how many hours it was, but all of a sudden, I saw way on the horizon, I saw this destroyer.
Now, were you signaling to them at all? Or
What?
Were you signaling to them at all?
No. Oh, they were so far away they'd never see me. And the only reason they saw me was because they had a guy up the crow's nest looking for Jap periscopes. And I forgot what caused him to, I don't know if he sort of dropped something, but anyway, he turned inside and saw me way off in the distance on top of the wave. And I can remember that destroyer was going along like that, and all of a sudden he did a 90-degree turn and started for me. I looked up and I said, "Thanks, God."
So you must have recognized the moment when they were turning your direction.
Yeah, I recognized when he turned.
And
Because, I mean, he was leaving a heck of a wake.
yeah.
And I knew right off the bat he was coming towards me.
I would imagine you were relieved when you saw that.
Oh, that's when I said, I just looked up and I said, "Thanks, God." And they came alongside, and I was still a little punchy. They threw lines to me, and I dove out of I had my life raft tied to me, and I dove out of it and swam over the side of the destroyer with their cargo net and climbed up the side. And they had a couple of guys that, when I was swimming over, they immediately started getting into a harness. They had a harness that they'd put in the guys, and they'd go in the water after you. Mm-hmm. And they were putting those on to come after me when I stepped over the, you used to call this edge of the ship the gunnel, and two guys were standing there, and I was a horrible mess with blood all over me. And, and they said that I looked at them, and they grabbed me, and I tried to push them away, and I said, "I'm okay, guys." The next thing I remember, I woke up in the captain's cabin.
So a few weeks after that, you made it back to your carrier.
Yeah, they transferred me back.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you saw your wingman shortly after.
Yep, and so
Was he surprised to see you?
oh yeah, they all were. They wouldn't believe it.
I think you were a ghost.
And hey, and when I demanded to go flying again, the chief of staff, Captain, I think it was him, he later on became admiral. I became a good friend of his. Anyway, I demanded they go flying again. And I go back to my carrier. So they contacted the carrier, the command ship, and the admiral says, "Send him back, we need pilots." So back to the command ship we went. And a couple of days later, my carrier came in and sent a whaleboat over to the command ship, take me back to carrier.
Now, do you remember the conversation you had with your wingman?
Oh.
Did you guys talk about what had happened to you and what?
Oh yeah, I do, of course, yeah. TJ, or not TJ, it wasn't TJ, BJ. He said that he was flying on my wing, And he said, all of a sudden you looked up, and we'd just been catapulted off the carrier. And I was about 500 feet, and he was just behind me here, and he said, you looked up, and my prop had stopped, and the black smoke had come out of my airplane. And the airplane stopped about 500 feet in midair, flipped over, and went straight in. Well, I got knocked out because when the airplane hit the water, my lap belt wasn't quite tight enough, and I hit the gun sight and knocked myself out. And I remember looking at my watch just before we launched. And I looked at my watch, 8 minutes.
Now I understand you still have glass in your eye from
My
that?
right eye, yeah. I'll tell you, if I go out in the sunlight, Tom, have you seen the reflection of the glass in my eye?
No.
But I'll tell you, when I go out in the sunlight, and the sun hits it just right, I'd be a couple little reflections. And then it's right near the surface, and the flight surgeon said never let anybody touch them because you ruin your vision.
Can you see just as well as you could?
Yeah, I went back to flying. I flew 2 days later.
A month later.
Oh, a month later. Oh, it was a month later. Yeah, thanks, Tom. A month later, I'm flying combat again.
And what?
South Pacific.
Yeah. You weren't nervous at all about getting back behind?
No, I was eager. I wanted to go. I mean, hey, my buddies are out fighting. I can't leave them alone. I mean, hey. And I can remember. I'm trying to remember which one it was. But anyway, I had one good dog fight. Well, I had more than that, but where I think there was there 8 Japs? If I remember, there was a
Jap.
Jap.
That one, Dad.
What?
You've told this a few times already.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, and then oh boy.
And you said you guys were credited for shooting down 8 Japanese planes, correct?
4 each.
4 each.
Yeah.
Were they all on one mission, or were they separate missions?
Well, no, they were one mission because that's when we had the first rockets.
So that was all on that.
Yeah,
same
on the
mission.
first rockets. Yeah.
Now, do you remember? You mentioned you had multiple dogfights on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the other ones besides?
No, we both made it. I'm trying to remember. I'll tell you, I can remember a couple other ones. Oh boy, now where were they? I had 2 other ones because I'm trying to remember. I ended up with 4, and then they added more later on. But oh boy. I'll tell you right now, I'm trying. I'll tell you right now, I'm a little fuzzy. I can't.
That's okay. So besides the rockets, what gun did you have on the plane?
I had 420 millimeters.
And were those on the wings?
Yeah, 2 in each wing.
And how much ammo would you carry?
Oh, I think about 100. Well, we had 120 rounds for each gun, canister, and we only use two at a time. You turn two of them off and leave two on. So now you had twice the ammo. Instead of 120 rounds, you had 240. And you learned you never held the trigger down, you just flicked it. And make sure where you were.
Now, would there be tracer rounds in there so you could tell where they were going?
Oh yeah, tracers, yeah.
Yeah.
Every fifth bullet was a tracer. So you knew where they're going. And by just touching it, you'd only fire a couple shots. And of course, one of them was a tracer, and you could see where you're going.
Now, you mentioned the Japanese Zeros were superior planes. Did you guys have any techniques
Yes.
that you had to develop in order to...
Yeah, teamwork. You always watch the other, but later on now, the early Wildcats were, the Jap Zeros were superior. Then they redesigned our Wildcat, and we had a 950 horsepower engine, and they increased it to a 2,000 horsepower engine. And they streamlined us. And we could outclimb the Zero, we could outturn the Zero, and now this is later on. And,
Did your plane ever get hit?
oh yeah. I ended up with a few bullet holes and the wing, and when I crashed, we don't know what caused. Well, the only thing we don't know what happened. All I know is I was catapulted off the carrier, and my engine quit about 500 feet, and I went straight in.
Now, on any of your missions, did you encounter any anti-aircraft fire from the ground?
Oh yeah, I strafed. I can remember. No, all mine were off a carrier.
Correct.
And World War II, it was what they say, 47. And in Korea, 67.
So 114 missions in total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in World War II, Congress had to you had to fly over 60 missions before they considered you got a war medal or anything. And in Korea, 20 missions, and I think it was 20 missions, you got the Air Medal.
Now, would you guys, in World War II, would you fly any bomber escort missions, or was it all strafing and scouting?
Both. Yeah, and, most of it strafing. I can remember, let's see, was that World War II or Korea? Actually, I've forgotten. Because I think it was World War II. My wingman and I had been launched out. It was World War II in Kwajalein. And we were softening up, we'd been strafing. We looked up, we were below the clouds, and the Admiral, we'd taken off. The Admiral had he used to call us his boys. And if the weather got too bad, he'd say there was no Jap worth one of my boys' lives. And I can remember I flew a couple missions when I shouldn't have. I had less than a 300-foot ceiling. And on the one of them,
That was Korea, Dad.
that was Korea?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I got chewed out. Oh, that's right, because the admiral had been a captain, and I had been his command, and so he knew me. And he used to call me Harry, and we used to go out to lunch together. And I'll think of its name in just a minute. But and he had a guy that he had, all these, his admiral stripes, his great big one, and a couple up here. So he could go out and have a beer with us, because it wouldn't look good for an admiral going out. He'd roll his sleeve up, so you couldn't see the broad gold. You just see the two. So he was a lieutenant, so the rest of us. And, oh, he was a nice guy. And
you had mentioned there was another instance. You'd mentioned there was another instance where your landing gear had failed. Your front landing gear.
Oh yeah. Oh.
When did that occur?
I was coming back aboard. Oh, wait a minute. That was oh. Oh, this is a carrier deck, yeah, on the carrier. Here we go.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah. We used to have a tail hook. Now, in the jets, if you got you call hook skip, you'd go all the way to the barrier, and they had a steel cable that ran across right where your wheels are. It would catch your nose wheel and stop you. And that's what happened to me. Your aircraft would then go down and hit on the deck. Now, they had jacked up my airplane, got the nose wheel down, and I'm trying to think of, I'm someplace in that, right next to those guys, looking at damage to my nose. And I can tell you who those two guys are.
But did that front landing gear failed? It did not come down like it was supposed to?
Yeah. Well, when the tail hook didn't catch the wires to stop you. That was the last thing before continuing on up the deck. And that would catch your nose gear and your main landing gear, and then stop you in place of the tail hook on the.
So would that destroy the landing gear then?
Yes. Oh, they put a new one on. They had spare. They always had spare nose wheels, because all carriers had problems the same way. And sometimes they were lucky and didn't. Sometimes they did. So they always had a replacement nose gear.
Now, did you lose any of your buddies due to getting shot down, or?
Oh boy. Yes. And oh boy. I'll think of it in a minute. Yeah, we lost maybe 5 or 6 of us. And
Were you pretty close with them?
what?
Were you pretty close with them?
Most of, I'm about the last of the Mohicans. I haven't seen him. Oh, let's see, J.T. Milne's. Oh, hey, good, J.T. J.T. Milne's. And Bert Holman. Now, Bert Holman lives someplace around here. And J.T. lives in New Jersey. J.T. Milne's. And we had a squadron reunion a while back. We got together.
So you're one of the last few left.
What?
You're one of the last few left.
Yeah.
Now, is this photo here? Is that after your crash?
Yeah, that's my. Yeah, this is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This is Gene Breen, our skipper, and this is our executive officer. Oh. Come on. Yeah, this is right after the someplace here. Oh yeah, this tells all about it in the back here. Oh, Barney Bartlett and Gene Breen. That's Barney Bartlett and Gene Breen.
And that's you in the middle.
Right.
Smiling.
Yep. There's right up on the back.
And this happened in the beginning of 1944.
Yeah.
So were you in the Pacific till the end of the war?
No, I was a Top Gun instructor.
So when did you?
I was
time?
teaching young ensigns combat tactics to use against the Japanese.
So when did you get sent back to the States?
Oh gosh. I'll think of it just a minute. I'm back in 40. Let's see, the war was over in 45, wasn't it?
Yep.
I came back to the States in 1944.
You remember which month?
Oh boy. I forget whether it's 43 or 44.
Well, it must have been 1944 if you had that crash in early of 44.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was in 44 then, yeah.
But do you remember which month you came back to the U.S.?
Right after the crash.
Looks like September. Yeah. I think his last combat was July 44, and then he flew in Pensacola, Florida, in September of 44.
December 44?
September.
Oh, September 44. Okay.
That
Oh, you
was
got
your-
my logbook.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah,
Now, was it your choice to come back home, or were?
No. But our squadron flight surgeon said that I had to come home. I'd had too many close calls, and I was. He felt that I was just too daring. I was wanting to fight too much. I didn't want to come home. I wanted to stay out there with my buddies. And but almost all of those guys had come home when they were instructing.
And you're probably more valuable as an instructor.
Oh yeah. Oh heck yes. Yeah. You can't imagine how many people's lives you saved in teaching them the combat of the enemy, their tactics, and how to overcome them, and how to outmaneuver them. And in techniques, I mean, there are a lot of techniques. You never allowed the guy to get on your tail. You always kept him on his tail and below him, so you could pull up underneath him. And you never allow him to get above you and behind you. You always kept him in front of you and above you, that he couldn't come back and get you. You could get him. And
so, did your love for flying, did that start way back when you were 12 years old and you co-piloted that plane?
Yeah, the old tri-motor Ford. Yeah, oh hey. I want, from there on out, hey, all I could think of was, I'm going to fly.
Do you think if you had not taken that airplane ride, do you think you would have still followed in that direction?
I don't know. I think I may have, because I was always, just enraptured about flying in space. And I mean, I helped develop spacesuits.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
When the end of the war came, where were you? Were you still stateside?
I was instructing in Sanford, Florida. I was what they call the Top Gun instructor. And they just dumped us. The war was out, and it ended up, there were a group of us that were some of the most experienced combat pilots. And all of a sudden, somebody in Congress says, whoa, everybody's leaving us. And they gave me a choice of going into the organized reserve, keep flying, or go back on active duty. Now, I wanted to go back to school. I mean, I had been a junior in college, and I was approaching 20 years old, and I was going to be drafted. And I wasn't about to be a ground pounder, as we call them. And I had a private license, so I just applied for the Naval Air Corps and was accepted. And there's a group of us that we went in together, and they sent us home on Christmas. I think it was over Christmas of, the war started in 45, was it? No, 41.
World War II, yeah, 41.
Now, they sent us home in December, or was it November? Yeah, or December. January of 41, just before the war started. Because I was home. The neighbors were having just before Christmas, having a neighborhood party. And because I was home, I was the honored guest. And there were 4 of us. There were 6 of us.
Now, when you returned home from World War II,
yeah,
did you get to see your family again?
Oh, absolutely. I was home with my family.
So how were you received by them?
Yeah, my mom and dad and my brother and his wife.
How happy were they to see you?
Oh gosh.
Did they learn about what had happened to you crashing in the ocean? And
Oh yeah. I told you my dad was FBI,
yeah,
and he knew
probably
almost
knew.
everything I was doing. And I know he and
Were you able to write to them while you were
oh yeah,
overseas?
oh sure. I told him I wrote home and told him I had a minor accident and that I would be flying again. Well, the destroyer that picked me up had a kid from my hometown. And he recognized me. And he wrote home and told his family all about it.
So needless to say, your parents had found out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they found out, and then because I can remember after I'd recovered and I was flying again in the South Pacific, a FBI officer came aboard. And this is when I found out my dad was an FBI agent because he was undercover. And he came, and I remember I was he came aboard the carrier, and he came over to me and he says, you know, your dad and I are working on the sabotage case together. I looked up at him. He says, yeah, you know, your dad's an FBI, undercover FBI agent. That was the first time I knew it. And people at my hometown didn't know it.
You just thought he was a police officer up to that point, or?
Yeah, he'd been the chief of police and a police officer, but they didn't know he was FBI. Nobody did.
It's probably purposeful.
Yeah.
Now, what was your involvement with NASA?
Oh, when I was in the Navy, because I helped develop in the Navy early spacesuits. And I'd been the test pilot and project engineer. And all of a sudden, Congress decided that space was going to be headed by a separate organization, not the Navy anymore. Now, because I had been safety officer for NASA, for the Navy, and checking out, test flying airplanes and all kinds of things, and had been the safety officer, NASA wanted me to stay on. And the Navy gave me a choice. And I wanted to realize that, hey, I've been the safety officer too long and running all these tests, and I wanted to go to the moon. And anyway, when I went to NASA, they automatically I'd written a letter. The top management in the Navy had been running these crazy tests at 100% oxygen and putting people in it. Gus Grissom, the three of them burned up because they were in a 100% oxygen environment at not even 14 normal atmosphere pressure, but at about 16 psi or more. So people in Washington was trying to figure out what it would do to people. The idiots, and I had run all kinds. I had been the safety officer and had to run flammability tests on all kinds of materials. And because I had run all these tests for the Navy, they decided they wanted me to stay on and become safety officer in NASA. And so when they were demonstrating, Gus and Roger and the three astronauts that burned up, everybody was watching on television when they caught fire. And because I had written a letter to top management, of which they were going to almost want to fire me. I wrote a letter and told them that they're going to kill somebody, that they didn't know what the devil they're doing. And they had called me up in front of a board. And this board was debating what to do with me, that I had the audacity to cross top people in Washington when the fire happened. And I'm sitting there getting ready to be fired. And the head of NASA church says, he's a head of safety. He is my safety officer from here on out, period. And that's what I became. And all the astronauts that I used to fly with, they loved it, because they knew that I'm looking out for their safety. And I used to fly with some of them. And so, John Glenn, he and I flew together in World War II. And I can remember with John, when he was in, had the organized reserve squadron. So I could get an airplane to fly anytime I wanted to. Now, they had a limited number of airplanes that the people in Washington, or based in Washington, could fly. So they were lucky to get their 4 hours in to get their flight pay. So I used to go get one of my reserve airplanes, and we'd go flying together. So they all got plenty of flight time. And so and of course, I got to know all the astronauts real well. And my son, have you got that picture, Tom?
Yeah, it's up here.
Oh, up there, yeah.
Yeah.
With some of the astronauts. One of the, I forgot which flight, one of the Apollo flights, Tom Stafford had a silver dollar. And when you're simulating space, which I have, you float. Now, he was on his mission, and the silver dollar came out of his pocket and got lodged way in the back of the spacecraft. So when I always had to check the whole spacecraft all over, check everything, run all the tests to make sure everything was normal. And then when we're going through the spacecraft, we found that silver dollar. And I looked at it, I said, good grief. This is the same date my silver dollar has, 1921, my birth date. And that was, Tom Stafford. Tom Stafford was 2 months younger than I was. We couldn't get over it. And so Tom has a picture up here giving them the silver dollar back.
Bet he was happy to get that back.
Oh yeah, yeah. When we found it, we were going to give it back to him. Then he says, "No, wait." He says, "We're having a big shindig tomorrow, and you and your family are invited, and Tom, and to bring the silver dollar." So Tom has his picture with him giving the silver dollar back to him.
How funny.
And
So, what did you think about when we finally made it to the moon?
that should have been me. I wish I could have been there. I mean, we have chambers that we can simulate space flight. Well, because I was responsible for that area, I wouldn't let anybody go any place unless I ran the same test in our big chamber. So I simulated going to the moon just like they did. Well, actually. And I felt, hey, I helped decide and make sure it was safe. And if I'm responsible, I'm not going to risk somebody else's life until I know it's safe. And that's why all the astronauts used to be good friends of mine. I wanted to be one of them, but I had done so much testing that Doc Christie, our flight surgeon, said that no more. That I shouldn't risk bodies anymore. Stresses that you run into. And I thought that he was being overly cautious, but they said absolutely no. I mean, management just said no. And I wanted to do it, but and of course my wife, she was the darndest warrior you ever seen.
Well, she cared about you.
Yeah. And then some dumb reporter called her one day, and I hadn't told her what I was doing. It was all classified, and we were running the very first demonstration for everybody to see. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you were old enough to see it, were you?
Probably not.
No.
In the 50s.
No.
Well, missed it by a few.
Yeah.
Me too.
And so anyway, to make it look more gruesome, I had to put a great big pan of water in front of me. Now in space, water immediately evaporates into a big batch of steam and it's gone. So that's what I did to make it look more gruesome. And just as we started to do it, Gene, the telephone rang, and my wife was a little over a month and a half pregnant, and it scared her so badly that she lost the baby. And she wanted me to get out of the Navy and NASA right then. Well, I stayed on for a while and then became the the National Safety Officer.
And this is you right here?
That's me.
Now what's going on in that photo there?
I am demonstrating, I'm getting ready to demonstrate a spacesuit in an explosive decompression. I'm in the chamber. And as I say, you know, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I guess we should put that in the plastic, Tom.
We don't have one that big yet.
What?
The smaller ones are in the plastic.
Oh, they are.
Now I'd like to ask you, in your 97 years of wisdom,
What?
is there any advice or wisdom that you could offer to my generation or future generations?
Okay. Yes. Always trust in God. I'm a firm believer. I've come so close in some of my flights to never surviving. And I just look up and say, thanks, God. And I can remember in some combat when I came out number one. I just look up and say, thanks, God. And I can remember a ladies' club asked me one time to tell them about some of my experiences. And I told them about a couple of them, and one of which only one person comes home. That's the survivor of the fight. And I wanted to make sure that was me. And this lady, in front of all the other women, looked at me and said, aren't you ashamed of yourself for killing that other pilot? And I stopped and I thought a few minutes.
A little bit, yeah.
And then I looked at her and I said to her, I said, what you're telling me, you'd rather be talking to him than me. And that stopped her cold. Because when you are in aerial combat, one survivor. And I don't like combat. I don't like wars. And I don't think anybody else does. But when it comes to the welfare of my country and all of my mates, my country comes first. And I know you could ask any other fighter pilot, they'll tell you the same thing.
Well, I want to personally thank you for sharing your experiences with me.
Oh, my pleasure, sir. And I hope I have been complete enough.
You've been phenomenal. And thank you for your service and protecting the freedom that we enjoy today.
Right. Well, once again, if you know what e pluribus unum means, that's me. What a mini.